This is part 2 of my Beast Wars retrospective series, so if you haven't yet, I'd recommend checking out part 1 first.
Last time on Beast.
Being that it was one of the highest rated children's shows of the previous year, Beast Wars was, of course, renewed for a second season. Is Optimus Primal gonna be okay? Yeah, don't worry, he gets better. However, the show was in for several changes. The number of episodes was reduced from 26 down to 13, over half of which were multi-part stories, with very few standalone episodes between them. This makes for a much more focused plot than the previous season had been, and also expands the scope of the story, while integrating the show far more closely with Generation 1 Transformers. The biggest of Beast Wars story changes is that the Predacon's rather mundane mission from Season 1 is retconned here to be more interesting and classically science fiction-y.
Transformers is basically science fiction. It's about an impact of technology, in this case the technology being the antagonists, protagonists themselves, and we said this is the fascinating concept.
Where before Megatron's stated goal was simply to gather large quantities of Energon, Season 2 reimagines him as the architect of an insane plot to alter history in favor of a Predacon galactic conquest. He plans to achieve this by traveling back in time to wipe out the human race in its infancy before it has the chance to evolve and help the Autobots wage their battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons. If possible, Megatron also plans to destroy the Autobots themselves while they lie dormant on prehistoric Earth, erasing the Maximals from history entirely. That's right, it was Earth the whole time!
We didn't even know at the time whether we were going to put it in the past or whether it was going to be just a completely different planet altogether. So we put 2 moons in the sky, figuring, okay, if we decide this is going to be Earth later on, we'll blow up a moon. We'll figure out a way how to blow up a moon. And lo and behold, that's exactly what we ended up doing.
Have you guessed the name of Billy's planet? It was Earth!
This new motivation of Megatron's gives me really strong Terminator vibes, and I like that. I like it a lot. So much so that I can forgive the fact that this change makes a lot of his actions from the previous season make no sense whatsoever in retrospect.
What does it matter which planet we're on? We came looking for Energon.
Season 1 Megatron was a pompous, self-important moron who was barely any more competent than most of the troops at his command. Now he's a genocidal madman willing to risk the destruction of the space-time continuum for the chance at taking what he sees as rightfully his.
The ultimate risk for the ultimate prize. A day of reckoning with those who made us slaves!
His plan only comes directly into play near the end of the season, but there's some great foreshadowing and build-up toward it throughout. Aspects of the Maximals mission are also retconned. It's revealed in the episode Bad Spark that part of the crew's original task was to find somewhere remote in outer space to dispose of an experimental transformer with enormous raw power, an indestructible spark, and an extremely violent temperament called Protoform X. When his stasis pod crashes on Earth, X gets loose and proceeds to hunt Maximals and Predacons indiscriminately until Megatron captures him, renames him Rampage, and forces him to serve the Predacons. The whole episode is stylistically reminiscent of slasher films from the 80s, and the flashback explaining Protoform X's origins feels like something out of Reanimator or Frankenstein. Just terrific stuff.
We probably used elements from every major science fiction classic there ever was.
The greatest improvement Beast Wars makes in Season 2 over Season 1, though, has got to be the characters, their development, and their relationships with one another. Several of the characters are improved upon dramatically over the course of Beast Wars' second season.
Our audience was surprised. We had depth. Characters grew over the course of the 3 seasons.
We really went to their human core. We put in love relationships, besides the war.
However, since the show was still primarily marketing material for the associated toy line by Hasbro and Tockar, new characters and updated character models would need to be introduced to reflect the newer figures on sale.
New packaging, same product.
The latest Beast Wars toys on shelves at the time were split into 2 distinctly branded subcategories: Beast Wars Transmetals and Beast Wars Fusers, both of which are featured prominently in Season 2 of the show. The concept behind the Transmetals line was that, unlike the previous figures, which had more or less been going for realistic animal forms, Transmetal beast modes were robotic-looking, with more organic-looking robot modes. This concept doesn't really translate into the show, though, where being a Transmetal is basically just treated as an upgrade. Each one of them also has a pseudo-third form treated as a separate vehicle mode, but were usually limited to just just changing a single aspect of their beast mode, such as Rattrap's feet becoming wheels,
I'm a rat with wheels!
Cheetor popping jet boosters out of his sides, or Tarantulas growing motorcycle wheels. Hilariously, the two team leaders, Optimus Primal and Megatron, get the silliest vehicle modes out of the bunch, with Megatron's feet turning into rollerblades and Primal's feet combining to form a surfboard. Out of Beast Wars' 14 characters at the start of Season 2, only those 5 are upgraded to Transmetals, with Rampage, a new character, introduced already having this form.
Beast War X level Transmetals!
The other Beast Wars toy line at the time, Fusors, retained the more organic-looking style of animal forms, but with each beast mode combining 2 or more animals to form a sort of chimera. The only 2 Fusors who make it onto the show are Silverbolt, a wolf with eagle wings and talons, and Quickstrike, a scorpion with a cobra head instead of a stinger. Silverbolt is an unflinchingly cheesy, heroic Maximal, voiced by the criminally underutilized Scott McNeil, who comes complete with his own theme music.
Not too shabby.
He's a chivalrous character who plays sort of like a cross between Superman and Sir Lancelot. Near the start of Season 2, he and Quickstrike are activated together, but don't remember their designation as Maximals. The two are initially tricked by Megatron into thinking that they're Predacons, but nothing about being a Pred sits right with Silverbolt, and he quickly defects to the Maximals.
May I join you?
Well, I like your resume.
From this point, he's primarily characterized as the most stereotypically good of the good guys, often to the point of it being comedic. Funnily enough though, Quickstrike relishes everything about being a Predacon, and likely doesn't even realize that he is in fact a Maximal. By this point, the company designing the Transformers figures, Tockar, had gotten a lot better at engineering the transformations between robot and animal forms. This meant, as you can probably already tell, that the new character models resembled their toy counterparts much more closely than most of the older ones had, since the quality of the newer figures had gone up considerably. Also, as in Reboot Season 3, Mainframe Entertainment's other project being worked on simultaneously with this one, the animation on Beast Wars Season 2 is significantly improved over Season 1. I'm not the only one who thought so either. This season actually managed to pick up an Emmy Award for Outstanding Achievement in Animation. Beast Wars was still a very expensive show to produce, though. Due to tight budgetary constraints, a maximum of 14 characters could appear on the show at any given time.
We probably killed more characters over a span of 3 years of production in a television series of probably any previous animated series in history.
Older bots, whose toy sales underperformed, would have to be rotated out of the show to make room for newer toys to sell. The Predacons, Pterosaur and Scorponok, are both killed off in Season 2's first episode after falling into a lava pit. Originally, it was meant to be Waspinator who dies alongside Scorponok, but because of his popularity among fans, the decision was made to spare him.
Waspinator is alive!
Although Pterosaur may have arguably been the Predacon with the most personality throughout Season 1, his shtick was admittedly kind of played out by this point. He tries to take over the Preds, but proves time and again that he's too much of a bumbling imbecile to rule effectively.
Well, leader, how shall we respond?
This made it tough to take his aspirations of usurping leadership seriously, plus the Predacons already had a more interesting treacherous character in Tarantulas, as well as 2 funnier comedic characters in Waspinator and Inferno, so I think ultimately the right call was made in getting rid of Pterosaur over one of those 3. Scorponok was just kind of boring, so I don't begrudge that decision either. I do still find it amusing how unceremoniously the 2 of them are offed, but it was a mandated decision by Hasbro, so you can't really give Beast Wars writers any flack for it. It should be noted, however, that both Pterosaur and Scorponok are shown to be undergoing the Transmetal upgrade process at the time of their deaths, despite the fact that the latter never even got a Transmetal toy. This detail was added to serve as a sort of out the writers could fall back on in case Hasbro decided that they ever wanted one of these 2 back on the show.
So the popularity of a toy to sell is going to be, somewhat, challenging to keep in a second season if it's not really performing well as a toy.
Speaking of which, the next episode sees the Maximals Tigatron and Airazor go off on a mission together, not appearing on screen again until several episodes later when the pair are swiftly shot off the planet into space. They do come back, sort of, later on in Season 3, but for all intents and purposes, these two characters are gone from the series. I'm gonna wait until we get to the Season 3 video before going into all of the details though, since none of them are quite relevant here. What is relevant is that Dinobot also gets the axe a little over halfway through Beast Wars' second season. The key difference though is that unlike Season 2's other 4 casualties, Dinobot's death is actually the conclusion of his character arc, which is built up several episodes in advance. You see, early on in Season 2, Dinobot begins to have a bit of an existential crisis, and by a bit, I mean a lot. Though nominally a Maximal, Dinobot did originally join with Megatron and his splinter cell of Predacons for their crazy time travel mission.
This cannot be Earth.
He only defected to the Maximals at the beginning of the series because he thought that Megatron had failed in that mission. Once the Transformers all realize that the planet they've been fighting on is indeed Earth, Dinobot reconsiders his loyalties, even though he has formed bonds with the Maximals by this point.
I'm really willing to betray my Predacon heritage for these Maximals.
After all, it was established several times throughout the first season that Dinobot was uncomfortable with the prospect of returning to their home planet of Cybertron, thinking he would be treated as a Predacon criminal. After leaving the Maximals and returning to the Predacons, Dinobot finds himself unable to abide Megatron's dangerous plan of changing history and once again switches sides.
Ambition has made you insane, Megatron.
Then return to your Maximals, if they will suffer a traitor like you in their midst.
His betrayal understandably leaves a bitter taste in the other Maximals' mouths, and Dinobot is treated rather coldly by his comrades thereafter. The revelation that they've been sent back in time also causes Dinobot to question whether he even has any agency in his actions, or if the future is set in stone, deciding that his life must end should he learn that his fate is predetermined. In Code of Hero, the only episode of Beast Wars to be directed by series co-developer Bob Forward and widely considered to be the best of the show, after briefly considering ritual suicide, Dinobot resolves to make amends for returning an artifact called the Golden Disc to Megatron after previously stealing it from him earlier in the season. This is because the disc contains records of Earth's history, which may help facilitate Megatron's timeline alterations if the information contained within turns out to change upon each alteration. Think the photograph from Back to the Future.
Great Scott!
While tailing Megatron, Dinobot learns that this is the case after all, giving him the answer he was looking for and renewing his sense of purpose.
The question that once haunted my being has been answered. The future is not fixed, and my choices are my own. And yet, how ironic, for I now find I have no choice at all.
Dinobot engages and defeats all of the Predacons, one after another, in an effort to prevent them from wiping out humanity and changing the future. He does end up saving the primitive humans, even managing to destroy the disc and forestall Megatron long enough for the rest of the Maximals to arrive, but at the cost of his own life. Dinobot is kind of a tragic character, appropriate considering his love of Hamlet.
To be or not to be? That is the question. Alas, poor Tarantulas. I knew him, Cheetor.
Haunted by the decisions he's made and the uncertainty of his destiny, Dinobot is driven by a burning desire to learn the truth of the matter and makes one poor decision after another to this end. These actions finally culminate in a heroic sacrifice that not only prevents Megatron's genocide of the early humans, but redeems Dinobot in the eyes of his Maximal comrades.
He lived a warrior and died a hero.
His arc teaches a lesson that even good people sometimes make bad decisions for selfish reasons, but that those decisions have consequences.
A deed once done cannot be undone. But perhaps it may yet be mitigated.
Also great about Dinobot is the way he interacts with the rest of the team, particularly Rattrap. Their tumultuous relationship makes up some of the best dialogue and character development throughout Beast Wars, which is doubly awesome when you consider both characters are voiced by the same guy. They start off the series heavily distrusting and disliking each other, but by the time Season 2 rolls around, they're more like frenemy rivals who have a genuine respect for one another, though neither would likely ever admit it. There's not really a big moment where the two shake hands and decide to work past their differences either. This is a gradual shift. Every few episodes, their insults towards one another land more often on the side of light-hearted jabs rather than vitriol.
It's your fault that I ain't kicking back on Cybertron right now, you overgrown stinky iguana!
I've done the planet a favor.
So when Dinobot betrays the Maximals, it shakes Rattrap the hardest. Rattrap also seems to be the most broken up when Dinobot eventually kicks the bucket in Code of Hero. There were even plans at one point for a Season 3 episode called Dark Glass, where Rattrap would try to transfer a backup of Dinobot's consciousness and memories into a new body, but the episode was scrapped by Hasbro for being too dark and not having enough action. Despite it not ever being made, the events of the episode are still considered canon by many fans, since they go part of the way towards explaining a plot hole near the end of the series. It's not just Dinobot though, there's actually a fairly consistent theme of loyalty and choosing one's allegiances throughout a lot of Beast Wars Season 2. Due to events in Season 1, Blackarachnia starts out Season 2 sharing a mental link with Tarantulas, a link he exploits to force her into betraying Megatron, helping him out instead.
Forget the Maximals, get my body out of here!
No way! You heard what Megatron said!
Do it!
Tarantulas' true loyalties remain somewhat secretive throughout the series, and his allegiance changes frequently depending on whoever can best serve his ambitions. Curiously, it's mentioned offhand in one episode that unlike the other Predacons or the Maximals, Tarantulas is descended from neither the Decepticons nor the Autobots. This plot point is never addressed again, though Blackarachnia does get hints of his true motives through their mental link, claiming that his goal is to destroy the mysterious aliens. Blackarachnia is eventually able to sever the link, but further complications arise for her later on when she and Silverbolt start a love affair.
That star, well, planet really, it's Venus. Reminds me of you.
Where you been, bird dog?
Scout Patrol.
Oh, yeah. Scouting the enemy, yeah. Find any new positions?
Pretty much everyone else on both sides know about it, but all passively tolerate their canoodling until things actually come to a head and the two need to decide whether to prioritize their loyalty to their respective factions or to each other. Silverbolt does favors for her behind the other Maximals' backs, and encourages Blackarachnia constantly to join their side. She, however, declines.
I like being a bad girl. And you know something else? I think you like it too.
I feel like this moment would be a lot less weird if Silverbolt didn't have a dog face.
Don't date robots!
In the episode Transmutate, Silverbolt and Rampage bond with and compete for the allegiance of a guest character called Transmutate, played by voice director Susan Blue.
What in the name of my great Aunt Ozzy is going on here?
Transmutate is a mentally handicapped transformer who was damaged in her stasis pod's crash. She has tremendous power but lacks the faculties to wield that power in a way that's safe for her and those around her. She has no desire to fight but becomes agitated easily, lashing out and causing damage. This episode, like Code of Hero, is one of the highlights of Beast Wars Season 2 for me. Silverbolt's compassion for everybody leads him to want to help Transmutate, where the rest of the Maximals cynically only see her as a nuisance and a danger. Rampage, on the other hand, feels a sort of twisted kinship with Transmutate, seeing her as a fellow malformed being with great destructive capability like himself.
The darkness of its spark echoes my own. It belongs with me.
This is the only episode of the series where Rampage is given anything resembling positive character attributes. In every other episode, he's depicted as sort of a crazed psychopath who wants nothing except for others to suffer. The sadistic bot can sense others' emotions and feeds on their fear. He's loyal to nobody and only takes a side in the Beast Wars when Megatron cuts his inextinguishable spark in half, trapping a severed piece inside a device that allows him to torture Rampage into doing his bidding.
Yes. Meet your point. Never forget who holds the essence of your spark, and thus is your master.
Rampage is definitely an interesting idea for a character. I just wish he'd gotten some more time devoted to him after such a great introductory episode in Bad Spark and developing episode in Transmutate.
Then there is Covert Agent Ravage.
The only other Generation 1 Transformer besides Starscream to guest star on Beast Wars, Ravage, was, in my opinion, an extremely odd choice for this role. Ravage is a Predacon agent sent back in time to sweep the entire Beast Wars under the rug, so they never come to the attention of any Maximal higher-ups.
We have to handle the situation first. before the Maximals find out.
He has a small arc where he needs to choose between loyalty to his masters, the Tripredacus Council, or to the shade of his old master, the original Megatron, leader of the Decepticons. Ravage is depicted sort of like a Soviet spy, complete with a thick Russian accent.
You will pardon my shooting the weapons from your hands.
But in G1, Ravage was just one of Soundwave's little cassette tape buddies who transformed into a Jaguar. He never talked, and he didn't really have much of a character. He was just always kind of there. Since Ravage had no robot mode on Transformers, here in Beast Wars, his robot mode has a cat head instead of a robot head. They even have him at one point implausibly transform into a tiny cassette tape that adds a rock and roll mix to the soundtrack. It really is kind of bizarre and comical, but in a totally awesome sort of way. Ravage appears as part of Season 2's three-part finale, The Agenda, which contains the most connections and references to G1 Transformers out of the entire series, basically. Apart from Ravage's inclusion as a guest character, this episode sees Megatron reveal that all his time travel shenanigans have actually been secret instructions from the original Megatron recorded on the Golden Disc at some point in the future, or the past, depending on how you want to look at it. Megatron, the new one, not the old one, also gains access to the Ark, the Autobot ship that crash-landed into a volcano on Earth around 4 million BC.
Now I enter these hallowed halls, a conqueror. Yes.
During this sequence, we're treated to several of the other Transformers characters as they appear in stasis lock aboard the Ark. Beast Wars had initially been derided by fans of G1 for being disloyal to the original series, but by this point there were very few detractors remaining.
I mean, everybody went ballistic and said, oh, they're bringing them back, they're coming, the original Transformers are coming, and you know, they were very happy. And so it was a great thrill to us when the fans kind of started to come around and say, hey, you know, maybe it's not the old one, but it's pretty good.
The Agenda was the culmination of a long-running communication process between Beast Wars showrunners Larry DiTilio and Bob Forward with the Transformers community through message boards and other early web platforms. There they would get feedback from the fans, as well as listen to suggestions on integrating the two shows with one another.
Die-cast construction. It's a lost art.
Notably, Transformers superfan Ben Yee helped contribute to the story of the Agenda episodes and is credited there as a Transformers consultant. The final episode of Season 2 ends much like Season 1's finale did, on a cliffhanger with Megatron successfully executing his evil plan by shooting Optimus Prime, yes, that Optimus Prime, point blank in the face. This creates a shockwave of causality that begins to expand throughout all of space and time. Megatron then proclaims his victory as the Maximals begin to fade out of existence.
It's all being destroyed!
Again, much like with the Season 1 finale, it wasn't clear at the time whether Beast Wars would be renewed for another season or not, so this could possibly have been how the show ended. Boy, I gotta tell ya, I'm really getting tired of these potentially series-ending cliffhangers on Mainframe Entertainment's shows. This had better be the last one. Sorry to end this video on a cliffhanger, but Beast Wars Season 3 is gonna have to wait a little while longer. On the next Mainframe Retrospective video, we're gonna mix things up a bit by taking a look at a show that I never actually watched when I was a kid, and thus have no nostalgia for, but that I've since heard great things about and have eagerly anticipated checking out. That show is Mainframe Entertainment's third television venture, War Planet's Shadow Raiders. Thanks for watching. Drop a comment down below letting me know your thoughts on Beast Wars Season 2. If you liked my video, consider hitting the like button, subscribing to my channel, and sharing this video with anybody you think may also like it. There's some other videos up here on the screen you could check out if you liked this one. Thank you guys once again so much for watching, and take care.